Welcome to Malmesbury, a historic town in the English countryside. At first glance, it may seem like just another picturesque market town, but Malmesbury has a remarkable past. It's one of England's oldest boroughs, with roots stretching back over 1,000 years. And from this quiet town came one of history's most influential thinkers, Thomas Hobbes. Solitary, poor, nasty, brutish and short. This infamous line was derived from esteemed philosopher Thomas Hobbes of Malmesbury. His experiences during the English Civil War shaped his belief that without a strong government, life would fall into chaos. A staunch royalist, Hobbes fled to France after witnessing the turmoil that led to the execution of King Charles I. In exile, he wrote Leviathan, 1651, his most famous work, arguing that a powerful sovereign is necessary to prevent anarchy.
He spent the first 20 years of his life around here, and I think it was a very different place then to what it is now. So today, Malmesbury, it's a very picturesque, nice market town. I don't think it was such a happy place back during his childhood. There were a lot of very poor people. In 1597, there was a famine, and Hobbes would have seen folks who were dying of malnutrition. It wasn't very happy in terms of some of the relations between the rich people and the poor people. So not an entirely happy place. I think it's a pretty happy place today. I think visually, obviously it's changed, but Hobbes would have recognised a lot of the town that we can still see today.
We owe much of what we know about Hobbes to John Aubrey, a writer and antiquarian who became one of his closest friends. Aubrey was fascinated by Hobbes, admiring both his intellect and his wit. The two first met when Hobbes returned to Malmesbury in his later years. They reconnected in London during the 1650s, where Aubrey promised to document his life. His writings have given us invaluable insights into Hobbes' upbringing, beliefs and personality. Thomas Hobbes was born on the 5th of April, 1588, in Malmesbury, a prosperous wall town filled with political and religious tensions.
So the abbey was closed down in 1539, but sort of still within living memory when Hobbes was born. The monks had been kicked out. England had become a Protestant country. The local politics were really quite difficult and problematic because the monks used to be in charge. The abbot kind of ran the place. And after the monks were kicked out, there was a sort of power vacuum, and different folks contended in the town for control of the town. So there was a lot of unhappiness in terms of the politics.
He grew up in Westport, an area near the town's edge, during a period of fear and uncertainty, especially with the looming threat of a Spanish invasion. Hobbes himself once said that fear was his twin, born alongside him. Yet despite his later fame, he remained deeply attached to his hometown, proudly calling himself Thomas Hobbes of Malmesbury. His family played a notable role in their community. He had two siblings who lived in Malmesbury for most of their lives. His mother, Catherine Middleton, was a local woman, and his father was a Church of England priest in training. Hobbes' education began here, at St Mary's Church in Westport. The building itself was destroyed during the Civil War. He later studied under a private tutor, Robert Latimer, whose lessons took place in the Triangle, which is right across the way from the Three Cups Tavern, which still stands today.
So Hobbes is this little boy from quite an ordinary background, and he goes on to become one of the world's greatest philosophers. And Latimer was clearly a remarkable teacher, and Hobbes was obviously a remarkable student. And he just opened the world of learning to Hobbes. By the time Hobbes went off to university, aged 14, he could speak and write Latin and Greek. He gave as a leaving present to Robert Latimer, he translated, there's a play by the ancient Greek playwright Euripides called the Medea, a very dark play. Hobbes translated it into Latin verse, age 14, as a leaving present, as a gift to his wonderful teacher. And later on in life, many years later, he came back to Malmesbury, I think, to say thank you to Robert Latimer, because he really transformed his life and made his career possible. Behind us here, there's a copy of Hobbes's great work, Leviathan, one of the masterpieces of political philosophy, and it would not have been written without Robert Latimer.
It is thought that in this very churchyard, Hobbes' father violently attacked Richard Jean, the rector of Foxley, likely over a dispute over his role as the pastor. With disgrace, he fled town, abandoning his family.
Hobbes' father, also called Thomas Hobbes, was quite a disreputable individual. And he was a clergyman. He was a Church of England priest. He was actually a curate in the village of Brokenborough, just outside the town. I think he spent more time in the local alehouses than he did in the church and pulpit. And he got into trouble with the church authorities for not doing his job properly. And I think one of the people who denounced him to the church courts was the rector of Foxley, a man called Richard Jean. So he had a big feud with Richard Jean. In February 1604, he saw Richard Jean walking across the churchyard in the abbey, and he attacked him. And they wrestled, and he knocked him to the ground. And this was considered, of course, a really disgraceful event for these two clergymen to be having a fist fight. And Hobbes was completely shamed and disgraced, Hobbes Sr., and he ran away. He abandoned the family, he ran off. This left young Hobbes in a difficult position. With no financial support for his university education, it was his uncle, a wealthy glover, who stepped in to fund his studies. This building stands on the site where Hobbes is thought to have lived. His life could have taken many different turns, but Malmesbury was where his intellectual journey began. There's a recognition all over the world that this guy was immensely important in terms of the history of political philosophy, and invented lots of the ideas that we now take for granted in terms of trying to make sense of politics and how government works. The town's political and religious struggles, his early education, and even personal hardships shaped the ideas that would later define his work. As he grew older, Hobbes reflected on his hometown with fondness. His roots in Malmesbury never left him, just as his philosophy has never left us.